Snow hammered the earth like shattered glass, each gust carving deeper into the night. Rex stood over the boy, his body stiff with cold, paws cracked open from ice. He no longer felt hunger, only the weight of duty pressing down on his ribs. The child beneath him wasn't moving. Rex's ears twitched, hearing nothing but the storm, yet he refused to shift an inch. The boy's shallow breaths fogged against Rex's chest, faint, fading. Each minute felt like the last. Rex lowered his head, pressing closer, as if his heartbeat could anchor life itself. He didn't know the child's name. He didn't know where he came from. All Rex knew was this: if he left, the boy would die. And so he stayed. White sheets of hospital light burned down on pale skin. Machines screamed in staccato bursts as doctors swarmed the table. Noah's body looked too small beneath the wires, his lips violet, his chest barely rising. Nurses stripped away frozen clothes, rushing warm blankets onto him, while another forced oxygen into his lungs. Outside, the ER glass, Michael and Ethan pressed against the wall, pale, helpless, their boots still crusted with snow. Somewhere miles away, in a different room, Rex's body lay trembling on a metal table, a vet whispering into the silence. His ribs rose shallowly, breath uneven, as instruments ticked. Two lives, bound by one storm, fought their battles in different corners of the night. The boy's pulse flickered like a candle, while the dog's heartbeat tapped against the edge of collapse. Both refused to give in.
Before the storm, before the boy, Rex had known only shadows of belonging. A collar once clung to his neck, leather cracked, then gone. He remembered warm hands long ago, the smell of food in bowls, the sound of laughter echoing through a home. Then, emptiness. The streets had become his territory, alleys slick with rain, dumpsters his hunting ground. Hunger carved deep into his frame, but instinct made him survive. When winter came, teeth of ice tore into every bone, yet Rex wandered still, searching for straps. Each night his body screamed for warmth he could not find. It was then he learned not to depend on anyone. Until the night the snow swallowed him whole and he found the boy. That was when his purpose shifted. He wasn't only surviving anymore, he was guarding something more fragile than himself. In the frozen park, the world had collapsed into silence. Michael and Ethan trudged back toward their apartment, numb from the air that cut like knives. They were about to turn when a sound carried faintly through the storm. It wasn't human, it wasn't wind. It was weaker than either, something between a whimper and a broken cry. Ethan froze, heart snagged by recognition. Michael wanted to ignore it. Exhaustion weighed too heavy. But the sound came again, softer, almost lost beneath the storm's roar. Together, they followed it through the trees, eyes straining against the blinding snow. What they found would burn into memory forever. A dog, frozen but unyielding, curled over a boy's limp body. The storm screamed around them, but the figures lay in perfect stillness. For a moment, the rescuers thought they were already too late.
Michael leaned down first, breath thick in the air. The dog's body looked like stone, coated in layers of frost, unmoving except for a faint twitch along its ribs. Then he saw the child underneath, skin pale, lips blue, limbs stiff with cold. Ethan reached forward, brushing snow from the boy's face. No reaction, only silence. For one unbearable second, the world seemed to stop. Then it happened. A faint gasp, shallow as smoke, escaped the boy's lungs. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. Life clung on, fragile but real. Rex's head shifted just slightly, his frozen muzzle lifting as if to warn them, "Do not take him." The rescuers realized this was not a stray guarding food. This was a soldier who had already chosen his mission, and he was not going to surrender it easily. The rescuers acted without hesitation. Ethan bent low, scooping Noah's body into his arms, the boy's weight shockingly light, fragile as glass. Michael reached for Rex, but the dog stiffened. Even near death, his eyes flared with warning. His body pressed tighter against Noah, unwilling to leave. Michael hesitated, then slid his arms beneath Rex, lifting him from the snow. The dog's chest rattled with a dry wheeze, his paw dangling limp, but his gaze never broke from the child. Snow whipped harder, covering their tracks as they staggered toward the road. Every step felt endless. The storm seemed determined to claim what was its. By the time they reached the headlights of the ambulance, Michael's arms were numb from the dog's weight, yet he held tighter. He knew instinctively that both lives belonged together. They could not separate them now.
The city split itself into two battlegrounds. In one wing of the hospital, Noah's body convulsed under seizure, doctors rushing to stabilize his failing organs. Monitors screeched like alarms, each spike a threat of collapse. Meanwhile, blocks away, under the harsh glare of a shelter clinic, Rex lay stretched on a steel table. His breathing was shallow, heartbeat faint. The vet's hands moved quickly, heating pads wrapped around his ribs, IV fluids pushed into collapsing veins. The same hourglass of time poured grains over both. Two lives, connected by one storm, fought their wars in silence. Neither boy nor dog knew the other was still alive, but the invisible thread between them refused to break. The rescuers, torn between both places, shifted in restless waiting. They understood the truth no one else saw. Saving one meant nothing without the other. In fevered dreams, Rex drifted backward to a night warmer than this. He remembered firelight glowing in a small cabin, the smell of roasted food, laughter spilling into the air. A hand had once rested on his head, firm but kind. He had belonged. But the memory fractured, breaking apart into shadows. He had been left behind, shut out into the cold, collar gone, his paws learning the texture of pavement and dirt. He had become just another forgotten stray. Hunger was the only companion that never abandoned him, until the boy. Lying against that fragile chest in the storm, Rex had remembered what belonging felt like. That memory gave him strength when his body had nothing left. Even now, on a table surrounded by strange hands and sharp smells, his ears flicked. Somewhere beyond walls, the boy was still fighting.
At the hospital doors, a woman burst through the cold. Her eyes were wild, her voice breaking as she demanded answers. Claire had searched all night. Her world narrowed to a single missing child. Now she stood in fluorescent light, facing doctors whose words felt like daggers. Noah was alive, but barely. His temperature was too low, his heart staggered, his body fragile as porcelain. She pressed against the glass, watching her son's chest rise under machines, tears burning her face. But when the doctors spoke of the dog, her breath caught. A stray had curled over Noah, shielding him from death. Claire closed her eyes, vision blurring. A creature no one owned, abandoned by all, had done what the storm tried to undo. She knew then that Noah's survival was not just chance. It was because of a guardian made of fur and frost. Night pressed down on the city, but inside the clinic, silence cracked. Rex, still trembling under blankets, lifted his muzzle weakly. His body screamed in protest, yet a sound tore from his throat, a low, fractured howl. It wasn't for food or freedom. It was for something else. Across town, in that same moment, Noah's pulse dropped suddenly, monitors wailing. Nurses shouted, rushing with defibrillators, heat machines, fluids. The two moments overlapped, as if tethered. Rex's howl bled into the night like a desperate signal, and somewhere, Noah's chest surged weakly back into rhythm. No one could explain it, but Ethan, waiting between both places, felt the connection like gravity. The boy and the dog weren't fighting separate battles. They were holding on for each other, unseen, but unbroken, as the storm outside finally began to quiet.
The storm broke with a cruel indifference, leaving the city buried beneath drifts of white. In the hospital, machines hummed like fragile lullabies, keeping Noah tethered to life. His skin held a faint trace of warmth now, though his body remained motionless, caught between waking and silence. Across town, Rex shifted weakly in his cage. His breathing had steadied, though every movement cost him strength. He refused food, eyes fixed on the door, as if expecting the boy to walk in. The rescuers sat in separate waiting rooms, exhausted, clothes still damp from the night before. They spoke little, for words had no place here. The storm had passed, but its weight lingered inside every chest, as though each breath still carried shards of ice. Daylight had come, but no one could yet call it safe. Doctors whispered of small victories. Noah's organs, though shocked, still fought to function. His pulse remained erratic but present, a fragile thread refusing to snap. Each new hour gave the staff a sliver of hope, yet seizures kept rippling through his body, violent reminders of how close death still lingered. Meanwhile, the vet charted Rex's recovery in slow increments. Fluids kept his veins alive, bandages wrapped his paws, but his eyes never softened. He waited, unblinking, every sound outside his cage making his ears flick. To the rescuers, it became impossible not to see the connection. The boy's heart and the dog's breath seemed bound by an invisible rhythm. Every rise in one mirrored a rise in the other, as though the storm had fused them together. The rescuers didn't question it. They only prayed both would keep pulling forward.
Deep inside the haze of unconsciousness, Noah's mind wandered through fragments of memory. The storm had been everywhere, a wall of white swallowing every landmark he knew. Streets he once walked after school blurred into unrecognizable shapes. His legs had grown heavy, cold wrapping around him like chains. He remembered stumbling, falling into snow that numbed more than it hurt. Darkness had pressed in, threatening to swallow him whole. Then warmth, unexpected, rough but steady. A weight pressed against him, fur bristling with frost. The storm howled, but the warmth stayed. He could hear a faint heartbeat, not his own, steady, persistent. His final thought before sinking into oblivion had been strange, almost comforting. He was not alone. Something out there, something wild and forgotten, had chosen not to leave him. And that was why he still breathed. At the shelter, the night dragged endlessly. Other dogs barked, restless in cages, but Rex stayed silent. His gaze burned through the bars, waiting for a face he had not yet seen again. Every sound of footsteps pulled his ears forward. Every shift of air made his tail twitch weakly. The vet shook his head at the refusal to rest, but no restraint could force him to look away. His body was battered, his spirit scarred, yet something unshakable rooted him in place. The storm had taken everything from him once before,
But this time, he would not let it end in loss. He had guarded the boy against the cold, against hunger, against silence. Now, in the artificial glow of this clinic, he guarded hope itself. He would not rest until the boy returned. In the hospital, Claire kept her own vigil. She sat beside Noah's bed, eyes fixed on the slow rise and fall of his chest. The machines spoke in coded beeps and hums, but she had learned to read them like lullabies. Each spike, each drop, made her breath falter. She whispered silent promises in her heart, ones she couldn't voice aloud. She thought of the dog, the one the rescuers described as refusing to leave her son's side. An animal abandoned, yet more loyal than the storm itself. Somewhere out there, in another sterile room, he waited too. Claire didn't know if she would ever see him, but she felt an odd certainty deep in her bones. If Noah pulled through, it would not be because of medicine alone. It would be because of the creature who had given him warmth when the world turned to ice. The city was asleep, wrapped in snow's heavy silence. In the hospital wing, Noah's chest convulsed again, his small body jerking beneath wires. Nurses rushed in, blankets torn aside, machines adjusted. His pulse collapsed to a dangerous crawl before clawing weakly back to life. Across town, Rex stiffened in his cage. His body trembled, ears pinned back, a soft growl vibrating in his throat. The vet glanced up, puzzled at the sudden change. Rex's heartbeat had surged, then dipped as though shadowing another rhythm far away. He pressed his nose against the bars, exhaling steam into the cold air. Two places, two lives, but the same invisible thread tightened. While the world slumbered, boy and dog fought unseen wars in parallel, each heartbeat echoing into the other's silence. The night stretched on, merciless, neither surrendering to its weight.
Michael and Ethan sat apart, caught in the grip of waiting. Their bodies ached from exhaustion, but their minds refused sleep. Each had taken turns between hospital halls and the shelter's narrow waiting room, shuttling back and forth as though their presence could tether the lives inside. Michael stared at his hands, the memory of frozen fur still clinging to his skin. Ethan replayed the sound he had heard in the park, that faint whimper that could so easily have been ignored. He knew what would have happened if they had kept walking. Both boy and dog would now be buried beneath snow, names forgotten, no story told. The weight of that chance pressed heavily on them. They realized survival was not only in the hands of doctors or vets. It had begun with a single choice: to follow a sound too quiet for most to notice. In restless dreams, Rex returned to his worst winters. He saw alleys filled with trash bags torn open by his teeth. He felt the sting of icy rain soaking his coat until it froze stiff. Nights spent curled against walls, trying to steal warmth from bricks that gave none. He remembered hunger gnawing at him so deeply that he once chewed wood, hoping it would silence his stomach. And always the loneliness, the absence of touch, of voice, of belonging. When he had collapsed in the snow beside Noah, he had recognized something familiar, a smaller body, trembling with the same fear of being left unseen. That recognition had ignited his last strength. He had given the warmth he no longer had, pressed his life against the boy's, not out of instinct alone, but out of the memory of what it meant to be forgotten.
Claire leaned forward, head pressed against the rail of Noah's bed. The doctors spoke in measured tones, words like stable and monitoring, but she heard only the fragile truth beneath them. Her son balanced on a line that could break at any second. She clenched her hands, nails digging into skin, silently begging for strength. Her thoughts drifted to the dog, the one who had shielded Noah when she could not. A creature no one had claimed had chosen her child. She wondered if somewhere the dog fought just as hard. A mother's instinct told her this bond was not random. Two lost beings had found each other in the storm's cruelty. Now both hung between life and death. Claire's silent plea was not only for her son to survive. It was for the chance to meet the guardian who had saved him. Dawn crept over the city, pale light washing against snow-caked streets. In the hospital, a shift rippled through the room. Noah's chest rose a little steadier, breath catching less violently. His temperature inched upward, a fragile flame refusing to go out. Doctors exchanged quiet nods, not yet calling it victory, but relief hung in the air. At the shelter, Rex stirred at the same moment, pushing himself unsteadily to his paws. His legs shook, body thin and battered, but his head lifted higher than it had in days. The vet blinked at the sudden burst of will. Rex moved closer to the cage door, eyes fierce, tail giving a faint thump. As if the invisible thread had pulled taut again, boy and dog clawed upward together, refusing to sink. For the first time since the storm, survival no longer felt impossible.
Morning light poured weakly through the hospital blinds as Claire was approached by Michael and Ethan. Their voices carried no pride, only urgency. They told her about the dog, how he had not been lying in the snow by accident, how he had deliberately shielded Noah when all warmth should have left him. Claire's breath caught, her mind forming the image she had not yet seen. A stray, battered by cold, choosing to lie across her son's body as the storm tried to claim him. She pressed a trembling hand against her mouth, tears cutting through exhaustion. Doctors had saved Noah, but she knew in her heart he would never have reached their hands without that animal. Gratitude filled her, fierce and raw. But it was joined by a strange ache, a longing to see the guardian who had carried part of her son's pain. At the shelter, Rex pushed himself into a standing position for the first time since the storm. His paws trembled, legs unsteady, but his body no longer betrayed him. The vet watched in quiet astonishment. The dog's ribs were still visible, scars still raw, but his eyes held a fire impossible to extinguish. He scanned the room with restless intensity, ears twitching at every sound from the corridor. A scent lingered faintly in his memory. The boy's breath, the storm's frost, the bond that had pulled him back from collapse. He barked once, a sound hoarse and fractured, but determined. It was not the cry of an animal begging for freedom. It was a demand to be taken where he belonged. Even in weakness, Rex refused to accept separation. The storm had tried to erase him, but he had returned to his vigil.
Noah's body had lain still for days, but on this morning, something shifted. His fingers twitched faintly against the sheets. His eyelids fluttered, struggling against heaviness. A fragile sound slipped from his throat. Not yet words, but enough to startle the nurses rushing to his side. Claire rose, clutching his hand, whispering silently through tears. His eyes cracked open for the first time, confusion and fear swirling beneath exhaustion. He scanned the ceiling, the wires, the faces, but his lips formed a single broken word, one no one expected. Not mom, not help. He mouthed something closer to a memory, a name he didn't know he had given. His voice was too faint to hear clearly, but Claire understood. He was asking about the dog, the one whose warmth had kept him alive when hers could not reach him. Miles away, in the dim light of the shelter, Rex rose again, pressing against the bars of his cage. His body still bore the weight of wounds, yet his posture sharpened, as if answering something beyond human senses. The other dogs stirred uneasily, ears pricking at the sudden intensity. The vet paused, realizing the animal's gaze had fixed unshakably on the door. It was as though Rex felt the boy's awakening, some signal passed not through wires or walls, but through survival itself. His tail flicked once, then twice,
thumping against the steel floor. He pressed his muzzle harder into the bars, emitting a low rumble that held neither fear nor aggression. It was insistence. Somewhere out there, the boy had opened his eyes, and Rex, battered, stray-turned silent guardian, was demanding the chance to see him again.
The doctors spoke cautiously, explaining Noah's condition would take time to stabilize. Yet Claire felt a different urgency burning inside her. She had heard her son's faint voice. She had seen the way his lips formed the memory of the dog. He had not asked for comfort or food or explanations. He had asked for the one who had shielded him from death. She turned to Michael and Ethan, her decision already made. She would not let this bond dissolve into chance. Rex had saved Noah, and now Noah was calling for him. Whether the world understood it or not, that connection had to be honored. She pressed her hand to her son's fragile chest, whispering silently that she would bring him what he asked for. Somewhere across the city, a dog waited, and soon they would face each other again. The shelter smelled of metal, bleach, and stale air. Rex sat upright in his cage, every muscle taut. His ears twitched at the sound of footsteps approaching, heavier, faster than the usual routine. The door creaked open, light spilling in, and two figures stepped forward. The boy's scent struck him first, familiar, layered with hospital antiseptic, but still carrying the faint trace of snow and fear. His tail slammed against the cage floor before his mind could process it. The rescuers stood back, watching as the frail animal they had carried from the storm transformed. Rex pressed forward, claws scraping steel, his eyes alive with a desperate fire. The staff unlatched the door, and the moment it swung wide, Rex surged forward. No hesitation, no weakness. He moved straight toward Noah, as though the days of separation had been only seconds.
Noah's arms trembled as he lifted them, still weak from his ordeal. Yet when Rex pressed his head into the boy's chest, the strength seemed to return. The dog buried his muzzle against him, inhaling deeply, confirming what instinct had always known. The boy was alive. Nurses and staff froze at the rawness of the moment. Rex, once silent, let out a low sound, half whine, half growl, as though chastising Noah for scaring him, yet refusing to let go. Noah clung weakly, tears streaking his pale face, warmth rushing back into him in ways no machine had managed. Claire stood nearby, her own tears breaking free. She saw her son's pulse in the dog's posture, the rhythm of survival shared between them. In that instant, she understood fully. Rex was not a stray anymore. He was family, written into their story by the storm. Shelter workers spoke of adoption protocols, of waiting lists and families eager to claim Rex after hearing his story. But Claire's mind had already closed to the idea of chance. She had seen the way Rex pressed against Noah, refusing to release him, as though his body alone could guarantee the boy's heartbeat would not falter again. Noah's small fingers clutched the dog's fur with the same desperation. No document or rule could rewrite what was in front of them. Claire stepped forward, her voice steady even through tears. This dog had risked everything for her son. No stranger could be more qualified to keep him safe. She promised the staff they would give him a home, love, and protection. Rex was theirs, and more importantly, they were his. The storm had made its choice, and now she simply honored it.
Rex entered the house like a soldier returning from war. His gait was cautious at first, ears flicking at unfamiliar sounds. But when Noah led him inside, guiding him to a corner prepared with a bed and toys, Rex settled. The walls smelled warm, alive, so unlike the cold stone of alleys or cages. Noah knelt, stroking his fur, whispering without words all the gratitude his heart could hold. Claire stood back, watching as her son's color returned each day, each laugh brighter, each step steadier. Rex followed him everywhere, shadow and guardian. At night, when Noah stirred from restless dreams, the dog was already there, muzzle pressed against his chest, steadying his breathing. A stray no longer, Rex belonged not just to a house, but to a purpose. For the first time since abandonment, he was truly home. Snow fell again weeks later, soft and harmless this time. Through the window, Rex watched, ears pricked, eyes unblinking. The storm no longer frightened him, but memory clung to its sound. He lay stretched at Noah's feet, warmth radiating through his fur. The boy read softly to himself, color in his cheeks, strength in his voice. Claire moved quietly in the kitchen, peace settling into the walls. Outside, the world remained cold, but inside, life pulsed steady and unbroken. Rex closed his eyes, not from weariness, but from contentment. His scars remained. His past could not be erased, but he had won the battle that mattered most. He had kept the boy alive. And now, each night, he would stand guard, no longer a stray, but a guardian, bound forever to the child the storm had tried and failed to take.